Now we come to Mike Winger's point 5, or 4, of his comparison of Psalm 22 with the Passion narratives of Jesus in the New Testament, depending again on which list you're looking at. And these deal with verses 12 and 13 of the psalm. They read, "Many bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircle me, roaring lions that tear their prey, open their mouths wide against me." Mike links these strong bulls and roaring lions of the psalm to the powerful people who gather against Jesus in the gospel narratives. He rightly points out that these are poetic verses, so these animals are not real bulls and lions, but that they are representative of powerful people. These powerful people of the psalm, for Mike, are reflected in the New Testament stories of Jesus' crucifixion in the Jewish and Roman leadership that conspired against Jesus and had him nailed to the cross. Bashan was a region in the northern section of the Transjordan, in what today are the Golan Heights and southern Syria. In biblical times, this was a land known for producing the finest cattle. We also hear about bulls of Bashan in Ezekiel 39:18, alongside rams, lambs, and goats, all of them fattened animals from Bashan. So the sense one gets here is not so much an animal that is powerful in a political sense, but an example of one of the finest animals available that is physically strong and menacing. To assign political strength to these creatures, one would have to already need politically strong adversaries to reach a preconceived conclusion, and that is exactly what the Apologist requires. And so they see the bulls and lions as the political characters of the Jesus narrative. But bulls are never equated in scriptural symbolism with either the Jewish hierarchy or the Romans. Lions figure frequently in Scripture, but again, they are not associated with the Jewish leadership or the Empire of Rome. Bulls and lions were also worshipped as symbolic of different gods by neighbors of the Israelites, but this association in the psalm isn't obvious, and if it were, that association wouldn't support the apologist's intentions either. Apparently, creatures mentioned in Psalm 22 are only specifically symbolic if they fit the Christian apologetic agenda. You'll recall the tola'at worm that Mike equated with Jesus as the little bug attaches itself to a tree like Christ affixed to a cross and sheds its blood if squished. The Hebrew word was specifically chosen, very specifically apparently, so that those with ears would hear. But how do bulls and lions equate with the Jewish and Roman leadership, except in the most broadest and vague sense? And then, only if you already have the Jewish and Roman leadership in mind, to which you can attach some sense of powerful symbol of which the bull and lion don't exactly fit. But the metaphors do fit in the natural context of Psalm 22. The psalmist is describing his current state of distress, which is something that has been building for quite some time, as the psalm says, by day and by night. In this state of weakness and distress, enemies have begun to encircle him, or at least that is how the psalmist feels. And as we'll explore in a later episode of this series, that feeling of enemies closing in isn't something terribly unusual in the ancient world. But it also isn't something terribly unusual in our modern world either. When one has been down on one's luck for an extended period of time, crisis after crisis can begin to build on one another until it feels like the entire world is against you. Back when I was a kid in the 1970s, there was a fantastic song by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes titled "Bad Luck" from the great Sound of Philadelphia, sung by the phenomenal Teddy Pendergrass. You can think of it as a modern song of lament that covers this same topic of everything just going wrong and bad things piling up one on top of the other. And this is the same sense of Psalm 22. When everything is going wrong, enemies encircle the weak to take advantage. There's nothing specifically political about these enemies, unless political enemies are what you are seeking. Then you can read your specific need into the more general descriptions of Psalm 22. But Psalm 22 certainly isn't suggesting political enemies. So in my skeptical opinion, I think Mike is again stretching these verses to the point of breaking in order to propose them as prophecy regarding the passion narrative of Jesus. But it's not something we shouldn't expect when the psalm is read through a Christian apologetic filter. As my old computer programming professor in college taught us back in the 80s, garbage in, garbage out. But in the apologetic sense of reading passages from the Old Testament, Jesus in, Jesus out.